Hey everybody. So we are going to start the show. I'm just going to get rid of this music here. How's everyone doing? It's been I think it's been 4 or 5 days since we last met. Hope everybody had a good week. Nice weekend. I am going to give people probably about 10 minutes just to show up. People kind of dribble in. So just to make sure, I just don't want to start with people being out of the loop of what we're talking about. But for who's here now, tonight we're going to be critiquing Casey's story. First time here. Casey, is that you, Kumquat Kid? I'm assuming that's you. Actually, I'm just going to very quickly put a notification in the group that we've started, just so people know. Here, just 1 second. Name's Faith. Oh, okay. That's okay. Definitely want to make sure that we don't start until Casey's here. Casey, if you're watching, just if you don't mind, just throwing something in the stream, just a chat there to let me know that you're here. But welcome to the stream, Faith. Sorry, just 2 seconds while I do this. Okay. Yeah. So, what time is it? Yeah, 3 after. Yeah, we'll give him 7 more minutes, just till 10 after. So, yeah, I just want to make sure Casey's here. I just want to get Casey's permission. So, I kind of explained in some of the videos I posted on the group that I do want to set up a YouTube channel so that every time we stream like this, for the people that weren't able to make it, because, a lot of people in different time zones, just so they can go back and watch the stream and still absorb the information that we discussed. But like I said, I don't want to do that without the author's permission of whose work we're critiquing, and just, out of respect. So just get Casey's permission on that. Hi everyone, surgery went well. I'm just relaxing overnight for observation. I'm glad to hear the surgery went well. How did you get into the stream? Are you just on your phone? Can't you post past progress on your Twitch channel? You kind of can. Twitch, I looked into it, and I think Twitch pretty much is more focused on highlights, because Twitch is primarily a platform for video games. So for people advertising their channel, they'll just throw up highlights for cool moments and stuff like that. It's not really built for what we're using it for. But I'll look into it. If I can put past broadcasts on the Twitch channel, I will put them there as well. But as of right now, I'm just sort of planning to have the YouTube channel up and running and get the videos on there. It's just a little bit easier, a little bit more accessible for people through YouTube than Twitch. I know probably for a lot of people in the group, they've never even heard of Twitch. But I do appreciate everyone sort of, getting it figured out and trying something new to experience this. Did anyone do anything interesting this week? Oh, that is awful tea. I wanted something to drink, and I dug an old box of tea out from behind the cupboard. It's some sort of orange stuff, but that is not very good. Oh my god. I'm a Twitch streamer. Actually, the posts will last for 2 weeks unless you become a partner. I think so. I think the posts I think you're talking about when it automatically saves the stream on Twitch for the page creator, and then you can download that stream that was saved for up to 2 weeks, and then that's what I was planning on doing, is taking that saved stream and throwing it up on YouTube. But Faith, maybe if you're a Twitch streamer, maybe I'll talk to you after the stream a little bit about that. I'm pretty new to Twitch, so there's certainly lots of things that you could probably teach me to make this a little bit more streamlined. Brute Force 50 cal. I really like the idea of posting the streams to YouTube or like Medium for later review. Yeah, I think it's a good idea too. And to be frank, I mean, it's good advertising for the group as well. I mean, as I've said many times, I think this group will work better the more people that are here, because I can read the chat, and it's not like people are talking over each other. It all comes down to what I see on there and what I read and respond to. So people can say as many things as they like, and I'll get to it, and we can discuss. So you get as much critique and feedback from everybody. I'll try another sip of this tea. It's really strong. It's like orange or something. Oh, it's so bad. It's so bad. Oh. But I am going to drink it. It's going to keep me awake, that's for sure. I'm using my phone right now, feeling pretty good, so I thought I'd come hang out for a bit and attempt to type legible comments given my less than sober condition. You can only do your best. That's no worry. I'm excited though. This is the first official stream. So we had the test stream on the what was it? I think it was the 26th or the 27th. I can't remember exactly. But this is the first official stream. So I'm pretty excited, and I hope you guys are excited too. The group is up to almost 150 people, which is crazy. 150 people. I mean, the group's only existed for 4 or 5 days. It's just insane. And everybody, even in the chat right now, I don't think any of you, I recognize the names as being here the last time. So getting some new opinions, and it's awesome. It's so awesome. Casey, if you're in the stream, just let me know, because I don't want to start without you. Also, let me know in the chat how many people read this story before now and did notes. This is going to be a fun experience. I miss peer edit reviews from classes and workshops. This will be an interesting exploration. Yeah, I mean, that's why I did it, right? I mean, I used to be involved in quite a lot of groups. Okay, so you're here. Awesome. Yeah, I used to be involved in a ton of groups, and obviously, with the pandemic, it's just not something people can do right now. You can't sit down and have a cup of tea or a beer and talk about writing face to face, because, I'm in Canada. I'm on the east side in New Brunswick, so they've kind of relaxed a little bit, but we work with bubbles. So you can choose up to 10 people in your life that you can have face-to-face contact with, but those 10 people have to be in sort of like a mutual agreement. So it's not like you can have 10 people and then, each person has their own 10 people. You have to have the same sort of bubble to isolate any chance of spreading the virus. So meeting up with people around the community and doing things like this just isn't really an option right now. Most people choose to, stick around with family and close friends. Kumquat Kit. How can I do that? I'm not sure what you're referring to. Sorry, if you can be a little bit more specific. Brute force, I made mental notes. And that's fine, right? I mean, I sit down and I do notes by hand on the paper for the story, but even if people have just read the story and they come at least with a little bit of background on what the story's about and how they felt about it, I think that's good enough. Is the music annoying people? I'm going to turn it down a little bit, but if you find it distracting, I might just get rid of it altogether. I just like a little something in the background. Helps me relax. I can't hear the music. Okay. So it's still going on. Okay. Yeah. For some reason, my program is cutting out the music for you guys, but it plays when the title screen is there before the stream starts. So I'm not sure what that's about. I'll have to figure that out. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. You guys don't need to listen to music while we do this. Can't hear the music. I don't even hear the music. I started taking some notes, but didn't get very far due to time constraints. That's fine. Making the notes, sorry. Where can I read this story? Okay, so the story is posted on the Facebook group. It's just there as a file on the group. I just put at the top, this is the story. It's Casey's story that we're focusing on February 1st. Now, I mean, I'm going to have to text on screen here. I'm going to blow this up a little bit. I can't imagine anybody can read any of that. So you can follow along on the stream if you like, but if you find it easier to read the story on your own and just sort of listen, that's totally fine. You might need to unmute. If you're talking about the music, yeah, I think that's exactly what it is, but I won't worry about that right now. I'm not too concerned with people listening to music as long as you can hear me clearly and you can see what's on my screen. You can see the story here. Let me know if the writing here is legible or if you need that to be a little larger. Oh, I see what you're saying. Talking to Casey. Anyway, yeah, maybe you do need to unmute. If you're listening on your phone, maybe the phone's muted, or on the stream there might be like a mute button, because I think other people can hear me. There you go. Awesome. Okay. So in future streams, what I want to do is I actually want to start a call with the author of the story and get them on the stream so that everybody can hear them. And I would like them to read their story to the group before we start the critiquing, just so that everybody's on the same page. For people who might have read it a few days previous, just, refresh your memory. I will read the story tonight, but the reason I want the author to read the story is because, it's their story. I mean, it's their voice. They will be able to read and express the story better than anyone else because it's their work. But I will get that sorted out. Hopefully for the next stream, I'll get into contact with whoever's story we decide to critique and try and get that set up. But is everyone ready to start now, or does anybody need a couple minutes to get a drink or run to the washroom or anything like that? I think that's a great idea. Yeah, I think it is too. Whenever I did critique circles in school, that's what we always did, and I always found it a great way to sort of start the session. Oh my God, that is bad. Zoom, Skype, or the like would always work too if we wanted a bit more face-to-face with anyone. And that's something else I'm kind of thinking about. Maybe having like a Zoom call or Skype or something, and then put the boxes up on the stream so that there can be a few faces kind of going on while we're doing the critique. A little bit of back and forth. It might just be a little bit more entertaining for people to hear on your end. And, sorry. A little bit more entertaining and a little bit easier I think a little bit of banter, a little bit of back and forth is useful. The text and sort of what we're doing right now is fine. It's sustainable, but I think it might be just a little bit more, just a little bit more interesting. And it'd be nice to have different people up on the stream each time we do this, so everybody can kind of get to know each other and see some faces. Nurses might barge in, but I'm good. Well, maybe they'll have a couple notes for the story. Who knows? Maybe they'll be helpful. Okay. So I'm going to start reading here. Let me just get one more sip of this awful tea. Oh, there we go. Okay. So chapter 1, like I said, this is written by Casey. I'm specifically not saying his last name because I don't have any idea in the world how to pronounce it, and I don't want to offend him. But this is Casey's story. So, chapter 1. As far as I know, this is the beginning of a novel. I didn't get clarification on that, but that's the way I interpreted this. So, it was a sunny Saturday afternoon as my old truck rumbled down Main Street. Everybody was out and about, enjoying the nice weather on Memorial Day weekend. It was a humid 70 degrees and there wasn't a single cloud in the sky, which was a nice break from the temperamental weather of Ohio. I made a left on Wagner and found my grandpa's driveway about 5 miles down the road. The long gravel path curved through the long grass and eventually ended in front of an old detached garage beside the old farmhouse. I got out and took a deep breath, holding it in for a moment. The smell of fresh-cut grass hit my lungs with an overwhelming sense of nostalgia. As I made my way up onto the large, wraparound front porch, Grandpa was sitting in a wooden rocking chair smoking a cigar. Without saying a word, he reached into a cooler next to his chair and handed me a beer. I opened it, took a swig, and sat down in a matching rocking chair next to him. "Is that look part of work? Because if you can't afford a haircut and some new clothes, you should have called," he said after several tense, silent minutes. My hair was shoulder length and pulled back into a ponytail, my beard untrimmed and probably a little out of control. Combined with my torn jeans and old, faded Harley-Davidson shirt, it was a complete 180 from the clean-cut kid that knew before I left. It was part of my cover, but since when do we mix family and business, I said, lighting a cigarette. "We don't, but you disappeared for 7 years without so much as a phone call. Hell, you've been back in Reynoldsburg for a few months and still couldn't call." "Grandpa, I was working undercover. I couldn't call. Mom didn't even know where I was most of the time," I said. "And as far as the last few months, the phone worked both ways." "Undercover? I thought you ran off to chase information on your dad," he said, slowly exhaling the cigar smoke. "I still had to make money. All the cities I bounced around to were connected to him. I never stopped looking into his disappearance." "Disappearance?" he said. "It's been 10 years. Joe, he's dead." "Then where's the body?" I asked. I didn't see anyone else chasing leads. Everyone wanted answers, but I was the only one looking. I thought you'd be able to get at least some information with your underworld contacts. He was silent for what seemed a long time. I felt like a kid sitting in the principal's office waiting to get punished. "Nobody would talk to me about it," he said. "Not mixing family and business wasn't just the fact that we were on different sides of the law. It wasn't just about the fact that we were on different sides of the law. It was also about the safety of all of you. The people I ran with weren't happy that my daughter married a cop." He stood suddenly and without saying a word and went into the house. A few minutes later, he came out with a box and set it down in front of me. "He left this stuff here about a month before he disappeared. I'm not sure if it will help, but I think he would have wanted you to have it." I opened it and shuffled some things around. There were some folders with what looked like notes, a .357 revolver, a family photo from when I was a kid, and a state map. I closed it back up and put the box in my truck. A black Cadillac SUV pulled down the driveway and parked behind my truck. The driver door opened, and a black man slid out. He stood 6'3" and was 200 pounds of solid muscle. He smiled, his white teeth glistening as much as his bald head in the sun. "Look who decided to bless us with his presence," he said. I laughed. "Since when does Grandpa let people like you on the property, Howie?" "I do some work for him every now and then," he said, giving me a hug. "Now that Howie's here, we need to talk about something," Grandpa said. "Your mom wanted us to talk to you about a friend of hers." "No," I said, "I'm not taking any jobs." We had moved back up to the porch with fresh beers. "Come on," Howie said. Just hear what it is first." "I'm still tracking down details from Dad's case. I don't have time." They both looked grim. "You could use a break from that," Grandpa said. And hasn't it been a while since you've earned a paycheck? I shook my head. It's not about money. I've been focused on Dad's disappearance for so long and feel like I haven't gotten anywhere. I can't afford to take a break. They didn't say anything. A small black SUV pulled down the driveway, followed by a red truck and silver sedan. Mum and Lila got out of the SUV, Renee out of the sedan, and Nate was in the truck. They came up to the house. Nate had an attractive blonde with him. Nice to see you actually made it, Nate said, with a smile. Even I have to take a break every once in a while. I hugged him. Excuse me. Sorry. This is Sam, he said. We've been seeing each other for a while. Hopefully you can get him to settle down, I said, shaking her hand. Mum had what appeared to be a loaf of bread in her arms, except that the loaf of bread had a face, large ears, and tiny legs. It squirmed and barked until Mum put it down. What the hell is that? I asked. That always made me laugh. It's a corgi, she said. A friend of mine had him, but he became too much for her to keep. I thought he'd be perfect for you. Too much for her to keep, I repeated mockingly. How does that sound perfect for me? He's got some emotional issues. He also seems to be as stubborn as a rock. You guys are basically made for each other. The dog sniffed around for a moment and then laid down at my feet. Great, I said, rolling my eyes. I don't need a dog, Mom. Well, now you have one. Deal with it. His name is Frankie. Grandpa fired up the grill, and we were at the table by 5:30. Sitting at the end of the table, staring down at Grandpa past the rest of the family made me feel tremendously out of place. It had always been Dad's seat. After all this time, it didn't feel right filling the seat without answers as to why it was empty. After dinner, we all helped with the cleanup duties. By the time I finished the dishes, Nate, Grandpa, and Howie were on the couch watching the baseball game. Everyone else was in the den looking through old scrapbooks and photos. I made a tall rum and soda with 4 cubes of ice and took it out onto the back porch with Frankie by my side. I lit a cigarette while he walked to the stairs and stared out to the yard, now barely lit by the setting sun. Unsure of the dark abyss, he laid down next to my chair and let out what sounded like a sigh. It was quiet, possibly the closest thing to peace that I'd felt in a while. After a while, Mum came out and sat next to me. Listen, I know your dad's disappearance is important to you, she said. I sighed. Grandpa told you I said no to the job? She nodded. I'm not in good headspace to be helping anyone right now, I said. I wouldn't be asking if it wasn't important. Arguing with Mom was a mission. I wasn't going to win, but I still tried. Why is this so important to you? I asked. She's a friend of mine. Her son was in my class a few years ago. We connected at parent-teacher conferences and became friends. What about the police? They do patrols around her office and house periodically, but she declined a protective detail. I think that means deal there, protective deal. A scared person turning down a protective detail was unusual. Now I was curious. Why wouldn't she want a police detail, I asked. Maybe he does mean detail. She's an attorney. She thinks having a cop following her around all the time would make her seem weak. Smart people protect themselves. Police details are smart. She stared at me with a scolding frown. Just talk to her, she said. Help her figure out another option. I sat back in my chair and stared out into the dark for a moment. I took a long pull from my cigarette and washed it down with an even longer pull from my drink. Fine. Have her meet me for lunch at Dino's tomorrow. Mum hugged me and went back inside. Sorry, I keep burping. Okay, so that is the story. So let's get some first impressions for people. What did you think? Just as a big picture. Let's not get too nitty gritty, but how did people react? How did people feel? I personally like it. I like it a lot, actually. To me, this story has a lot of substance. There's a lot of backstory, which is really, really important for novel writing. You can't really just rely on the here and now moments. You need to know what happened before. He's an angry guy. You get a lot of his character very quickly. I really liked it. It gave me a sense of American backstory. I really like it. Want to see what happens. The MC is bitter and has a lot of trauma that I hope will be worked through. You know, it's funny. I thought the protagonist wasn't bitter enough. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's been undercover for quite a long time. Now, we don't know a whole lot about what that entails, his undercover work, but it's so intense that his whole demeanor, his whole outward appearance has changed. Now, I'm assuming that's partly like a disguise, but to be undercover for that long, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's maybe it's not fair to say that. I mean, the novel would continue and would say lots about where things go. But I just got this weird feeling that maybe the protagonist was just a little bit soft. But that's just me. The beginning flowed beautifully. There's quite a lot of description in the beginning. It's a nice introduction. I do have some things to say about it. We'll get into that next. I think that the undercover can detach themselves from work. I mean, they probably can. It's part of the job. But the thing about writing stories is that you want your characters to hurt, which sounds a little bit sadistic, but, you know, one of the best exercises in any form of writing is something that a lot of writers call, you know, putting your characters through hell. And if you have a character like this that's been undercover for all these years, it might be interesting to see somebody who is outwardly traumatized, just to add a little bit more excitement, a little bit more intrigue. Because as a reader, I'm going to be like, oh, I wonder what went so wrong, or what was so intense in this undercover work that this character, you know, is this, you know, disturbed by it maybe. But again, that's an opinion. I'm not the writer. There could be a plan, right? But that's just a first impression. And what I mean is, it feels like there's a lot of moving around without any point. Yeah. If you're talking about over-description, I kind of felt the same way. A little bit. I mean, a little bit of description is good. We'll get into that in a second. I was always curious whether I should add more about his undercover time, maybe a convo. Well, see, the thing about, again, we'll kind of get into this, but drip feeding information in a novel is super important. So you don't want to just dump all the information into the first chapter. You want people to have questions. You want them to wonder. So if you have this character that's really changed or interesting because you know that he was undercover, naturally the reader's going to want to know, well, what the hell happened when he was undercover that he's now like this? That would be a really powerful question for a reader. I know I would want to know. You could always do like a prequel chapter and then time jump. You could. I don't like prequels. Because I think that I don't like the idea of a writer needing to rely on a hook. I think you should know when to start your story. Start at chapter 1 and just let the writing run and write it well enough that it's interesting. And you don't need a big hook. I mean, a first chapter should be there to, you know, instigate the main conflict of the story, and it should garner attention and intrigue and, like I said, build questions. So, I mean, you could. Lots of people do. I'm not saying it's wrong. I just personally feel that if you can make the writing strong enough in the first chapter that you don't need a prologue, that you don't need a hook, you're going to be looking a lot better in the long run, because you're going to learn enough and you're going to be comfortable enough with creating good writing that you don't need to kind of lean your weight on things like that. That's a controversial opinion, Dominic. If you're talking about the hook, you're right. It is a controversial opinion. I mean, I'm a writer first and an editor second. So anytime I come into a conversation about writing and offer my opinion, it is going to be biased by how I write and how I think a story should go. But that's just part of critiquing, right? I mean, people are going to offer opinions and advice that you're not going to totally agree with all the time. But maybe there's just a small part of it that kind of gets your mind going in a direction that you can take that information and run with it in your own way and strengthen the story to best suit you. That's part of what a critique group is about. If this is an action book, though, shouldn't the beginning attract those kinds of readers? Well, I mean, I think that, it could. Action is difficult to write in a novel. You can't really rely on gunfights and fist fights to keep people interested, because it doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't really work in a story. You can have a little bit of action just for the sake of somebody getting hit or being into a fight, but you can't expect to write a 2-page anecdote about a fight that's going to be interesting, because it doesn't work like a movie. You have to rely on plot and questions and tension to really make things interesting, and then sometimes let that bomb go off with a little bit of violence or action at the end. But Faith had a good point there. I mean, if this is an action book, shouldn't the beginning attract those kinds of readers? You're right. You should know who your audience is when you write a book, and I mean, the first chapter is the most important part of your book. It's the part of a book that should get the most thought and work put into, because it's what's going to make or break your reading audience. So yeah, I mean, Casey should think about who his audience is. If it's an action crowd or a detective crowd or what have you, that's reading this, he should keep that in mind. I'd always envision his trauma and bitterness from his dad's disappearance. Like Piper said, maybe I need to edit and make that more of the focus point. I mean, I think there's plenty of focus on the dad part. I certainly know what's going on. I know it's going to be a huge part of the novel. And I think it was smart to have that as part of the novel, but still have this interaction with his mom where he's going to be starting this new mystery. And there's the two, I can only assume that the two are going to kind of melt together at some point, but it's smart to have a couple things going on. So you got the story of the dad sort of being, it's almost like the backbone of the story. It's the backbone of the characters, but the focal point, I feel like it's going to be, is on this new mystery that's sort of being brought to him by his mother. Thoroughly intrigued to learn more about his dad's disappearance and its effect on the protagonist's character development. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. So let me just grab the notes I have here. Let's start with the first paragraph. I think we've kind of got everybody's opinion out there as far as a first take. So the first line. Again, first line, it's an important line. It's really important. It's the first line of your book. A lot of people read one line and decide whether or not they'll like a book. You'd be surprised. And when I read this line, it was a sunny Saturday afternoon as my old truck rumbled down Main Street. It's a cliche. Really, 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 really cliche. A sunny Saturday afternoon. It doesn't really mean anything. And I was kind of saying it in the last stream about cliches. The reason cliches are so detrimental to writing is because when I read something like sunny Saturday afternoon, my brain has already decided what that means, because I've read it in so many other texts before. So many other writers have already put me on the podium and made me think about that moment in their own story, that there's no way I'm going to come into the story and have a new mental image of what that means. It's not going to put me in the moment. It's just words on a page. So sunny Saturday afternoon, cliche. As my old truck rumbled down Main Street. Again, old truck, I kind of think that's a cliche in Main Street. I mean, it would have been nice if it was a little bit more original, just Main Street. I know that's a real street, and there's plenty of places in the world, or plenty of streets in the world that are called Main Street. But I think a better name of the street with a little bit more personality would just help me throw me into it a bit better. What do other people think? Oh, Piper had to run. That's okay. That'll probably happen in this group a lot. People kind of pop in and pop out. But do other people think that that's a cliche, or is it just me? Do you think it hurts the reading, or did you read it and feel, no, I know what's going on, and I like the image that's put in my head? And don't be afraid to say something. If you don't like something in the story, keeping it in is not helping the writer. We are all here to help. We're not here to judge. We're not here to make fun. We're just here to be supportive and constructive. And I know that, I talked to Casey a little bit before. Seems like he's got a good head on his shoulders. He can listen to the critique and take it with strength, not with pain, as it were. I have to agree. It was very cliche for the first few sentences. However, yeah, you're right. It was, so first line, and then everyone was out and about enjoying the nice weather on Memorial Day weekend. Memorial Day weekend, that's got a little bit of personality to it, but everyone was out and about enjoying the nice weather. Again, I just don't think that has a whole lot of impact. I would have liked the first sentence to have the protagonist's thoughts so we can hear him. It's not a bad idea, actually. That's actually a really great idea. You can establish tone and voice with the protagonist. I get the feeling that the plot here is gonna. I'm assuming it's sort of a mystery action cop novel, but I feel like the protagonist is going to be really important, and building up that character is really going to help the writing, help the readers grow attached. I know tons of books that don't have a great plot, but have had really great characters, and I still enjoyed them. You guys aren't going to hurt my feelings. Part of me hopes you tear it apart so I can grow. We won't tear it apart. We're just going to be constructive, but that's a good attitude. Thank you for saying that, Casey. I like rumbled as an action verb for the truck. I did too. But I also thought the beginning was a bit cliche. Writers tend to begin the description of the setting with weather. They do. I think it's something that people do. And it's a habit that people should break. I really think that the idea about using the protagonist's thoughts as a first line is a really good idea. Sorry, I'm typing slow between the phone and the poor motor skills trying to get my thoughts out quickly. That's okay. There's no rush. Like I said, this is always just supposed to be relaxing. I want it's something to be some people enjoy. And, just chill out and talk about writing and have a good time. I didn't know that the first sentence is cliche. It does set the environment. It does set the environment, but does it set the picture in your mind? Does it really just pop off the page and you just feel sucked in? I didn't get that vibe from it. When I read it myself, I agreed with you. The way you read it made me like the paragraph. My old truck, whatever we want to call it, rumbled down Main Street for the first time in 7 years. I get rid of as many was sentences and tell part of the story right away. Yeah, get rid of those passive verbs. I actually made a couple notes of that too. I didn't jot everyone down, but it's always important to know, at least know where your passive verbs are. Any opportunity you can use to get a better verb in there to really beef up the sentence and just give it a little bit more life and action is always going to be beneficial. He could show his bitterness and his thoughts with seeing his family maybe because he hasn't seen them in so long and describe the streets. His bitterness and thoughts with seeing his family. Like, do you mean like thinking about he's going to see his family and sort of his thoughts leading up to the moment? Here, just while I answer that, let's just keep going here a little bit. So yeah, I kind of thought the second line was a little bit cliche too. It was a humid 70 degrees and there wasn't a single cloud in the sky. There should be a comma. I think this was just a little boo-boo. Where was it? Here. Cloud in the sky, which is a nice break from the temperamental weather in Ohio. I'm assuming that's supposed to be a comma. I will give Casey the benefit of the doubt. Doesn't even like that. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, that would be a good way to build up tension too. He's going to meet these people. You kind of get a feel that like, oh, maybe this isn't going to go so well. That would be a good way to build tension. Okay. I really like the term temperamental weather. I don't know. When I read it the first time, and I always put a little check mark on the page when I like something, and I like that. Here's the next thing. I think there should be a new paragraph. The story's sort of detaching from sort of this big overhead description of what things look like. And then it kind of gets narrowed down into the action of him driving the car, making a left on Wagner, found my grandpa's driveway. I think that it helps the pacing to create a new paragraph. If I was writing it, I would have a new paragraph. I think it's appropriate, but again, that's kind of one of those things that's up to the writer. But I think it's worth taking note of. Casey likes the short sentences structure. He could replace which with this. Which with this. Where are you talking about? Oh, are you talking about right here? Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, he could do that. Yeah, he could say that. But I think I don't know how far along Casey is with the novel. As you get further along with the novel, you will find yourself getting closer to characters. You will find characters speaking more for themselves than you're actually writing down, which sounds really silly, but for anyone who's ever in this group has ever written a book before, from start to finish, I think that you're familiar with the idea of characters starting to breathe, characters starting to speak for themselves. It happens. And maybe by the time Casey's done the book, he'll have a much better idea of the character, and the character will be able to speak for himself. And rewriting a chapter one sort of thing like this with more voice will be a lot easier and probably a lot more interesting for the reader. I'd like to point out I like to avoid the dreaded as when possible. It is practical when we speak English, but I feel it really does not translate well as comprehensive literature. And what I mean is using it like a passive verb, like we were just saying. A passive verb. I mean, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not totally sure where exactly we're talking about, but you're right. You never want to use passive verbs if you can avoid it. Let's keep going here. So this is something I'm going to talk about a lot during this critique. Over description. Driveway about 5 miles down the road. I just don't think that matters. I think you could have just as easily written, I found my grandpa's driveway down the road. It gives the feeling of somebody, just driving down the road and finding the house. I really don't know how important knowing that he's 5 miles down the road is. And any fat you can ever trim off a sentence is worth doing. Short and sweet, always. Saying less is more, as people say. I just think it's really important to know what information in the book is important to the reader and what is not. If the reader doesn't need to know something, or it's not going to make them feel something, or it could be just as easily accomplished with less words, always do it. It's important to stagger the sentence length to not lose the reader. Some simple, some moderate, some difficult, lengthy. I wouldn't say difficult, but you're right. You should have variation in the flow. Sometimes when I write, I almost think about poetry stanzas. So they have like A-B structures, things like that. Sometimes I will go off of those to decide, well, this sentence will be just like one sentence, one phrase, short and sweet, and the next one, spliced with a comma, the next one maybe spliced with 2 commas, and then sort of build patterns like that. Because that wasn't Casey. Bernadine said that. You're absolutely right that it should be varied. Flow should be interesting to read in the novel. You don't want to just keep repeating the same form of a sentence because it will get choppy and boring. But a sentence should never be difficult to read. It should always be clear. A person should be able to read a sentence once and know exactly what the writer's talking about. First sentence. It's a sunny day as I drive my truck. Kind of a weird feel. Sorry, I'm not sure what you're trying to say there. Oh, I see. I'm sorry. I see what you're saying. It was a sunny afternoon as my old truck rumbled down Main Street. Okay, yeah. I didn't have too much issue with that as being there. I had more issue with the cliches, but you're right. I mean, it is a passive verb, and if it can be fixed and made more powerful, it's always worth it. Casey, just so you know, after we're done critiquing, I'm going to put all my notes into a Word document, I will email it to you. So I'm not really doing, sorry guys, I'm a little bit scatterbrained tonight. I just want to make some things. So let me just, we all seem to be in pretty well agreement that this is a cliche. I still argue that this is a cliche. I'm going to put it in. Oops. We caught that there. I'm not going to worry about that. Temperamental, I like that. So I'm going to put it in green. And then we made the paragraph break here. So I'll just put this, I don't know, we'll put it in blue just so Casey knows. And then I thought that maybe this could be cleaned up. Put that in blue. Blue usually means I just think it could be rewritten to be more clear. The long gravel path curved through the long grass. So here was another issue I had. I mean, you've used long twice. I don't really think it benefits repeating words like that. I think if you can find another word, I mean, there's tons of synonyms for long, so I think that might be worth doing. This was another moment here that I thought was a little bit, I mean, people might disagree with this one, but I got out and took a deep breath, holding it in for a moment. I just don't think the holding it in for a moment is necessary. I think that, I got out and took a deep breath. I mean, I think that is enough there that it's not really necessary. It's just kind of fat on the sentence. But I could see that one being argued a little bit by people. Maybe take a deep breath and that image of the person holding it in their chest, it might be powerful. But I personally thought that maybe it was unnecessary. By the way, anything I say, I'm just gonna, because for the interest of time, I'm just gonna keep going through this. Anybody has anything to say as I'm going, just put it in the chat. I will read it. It's right here beside me. I can see. So I made my way up on. Okay, here's the next thing. I don't think this sentence means anything. The smell of fresh cut grass hit my lungs with an overwhelming sense of nostalgia. I think everybody kind of feels nostalgic when they smell cut grass. I think everybody knows how that feels. I mean, you could relate to the reader, but I don't think that's interesting enough to be in the second paragraph or what was originally the first paragraph of your story. It's too flat. I would be more interested in knowing something that's nostalgic for the main character that we wouldn't maybe be able to relate to. I mean, maybe he's nostalgic to something that's been around him while he's been undercover. I mean, that's an opportunity to build the backstory without shoving it down people's throat. That's showing rather than telling, which is really important. As I made my way up onto the large wraparound front porch, I thought you could use a better word than this. I think there's a better word than large, sorry, even wide. I just don't think large is a strong enough word to paint a picture. I mean, decks are all going to be large to some degree. Here, Grandpa was sitting. Passive verb, that one really bothered me. And then smoking a cigar. I love this. I really like that image of just Grandpa sitting in a rocking chair. It has this like docile feel, and then he's sitting there smoking a cigar. I enjoyed that. And then sat down in a matching rocking chair. The rocking chair, if he's sitting in a matching rocking chair to his grandfather, you kind of need the reader to know what you're talking about. I don't know what this rocking chair looks like, so how can I know it's matching? You know what I mean? I mean, I could go off of what I think a rocking chair looks like, and that might be just fine. That's all that Casey wants us to know. But I don't know. It might add to the moment. It might add to emotion. If I just knew just a little bit more about the rocking chair, I wouldn't put in a lot. Just maybe the type of wood, or even if it's even made of wood. You know what I mean? Things like that. Okay. I'm not going to go through the dialogue too crazy because I kind of have the same sentiment about all the dialogue. The characters have a lot to say. There's a lot of information. I can't hear you. I can hear you. I just can't. Okay, no worry, Casey. I feel like the dialogue does not read naturally. Instead of long grass, switchgrass is a type of long grass that grows in fields if it grows in Ohio. Yeah, well, there you go. I mean, there's different kinds of grass you could use. And that, again, I mean, that adds a hell of a lot more personality and projects way more image than just long grass. I mean, is long up to my waist? Is long up to my knee? I mean, those are both technically long grass. Just getting back to what I was saying. Is that look part of work? Because if you can't afford a haircut and some new clothes, you should have called. I don't believe that sentence. I just don't believe somebody would say that. I like the sentiment. He's clearly trying to add, a sense of, he's trying to build on the whole, character, on the protagonist. He's doing something there. He's working on the character. He's working on the backstory with that line. But I just didn't find that believable. And there were quite a lot of lines in the story, actually, that I just didn't feel were believable. It reads too much like you're trying to provide information to the reader as opposed to letting characters speak for themselves. And that's a common thing that happens in writing. And I think it's totally fine for, like an early draft of a book. I mean, I think that's going to happen a lot. And the further you get into the story, you'll realize, like, well, I explained this here later on, I explained this here later on. I don't even need it here in the first chapter anyway. And you'll start cutting down on things. But I think believable dialogue is really, really important, especially in this kind of book where I feel that Casey really wants it to be character-driven. Maybe somebody has... does anybody have any opinion on that, about the dialogue? Because I think that's really, really important for this critique. I'm just going to check my phone really, really quick while you're answering. Do people find it believable? Is it just me that's feeling that way? Or did other people feel that the dialogue... Because, I mean, we'll get into this later on, but I didn't really feel like people talking felt like different people. I felt like every character kind of had the same voice, and that there was more attention put into the information that they're saying as opposed to who they are. And that's something Casey's going to have to think about. Who are these people? I mean, the protagonist, he's already got a pretty good jump on the protagonist, I think. He's got backstory there, and it's going to be easier to figure that out. But I think every character in a novel deserves plenty of time invested in thinking about who they are, how they would talk, how they react to things. Because there is a lot of tension in this first chapter. But everybody always kind of reacted the same way. There was snarky comments, there were sarcastic comments. I mean, there's those elements here, but I just didn't get enough personality from it personally. A lot of sentences are used to explain the same point. Yeah, there's a lot of redundancy. Sort of as I was showing in that first couple of paragraphs there. There's just, I mean, it's not exactly the same. I mean, there's a little bit of another dimension added when there's redundancies written in the story, but I think you're better off just using one really good sentence than two pretty good sentences. It needs some love. It's very much back and forth without much personality. I agree. Agree with the grandpa rocking chair and cigar. Oh, about liking it, I'm assuming it. I liked it. What do you guys think? What do the rest of you think? There's only a couple of people telling me here. It's really important that everybody contribute because, that's the thing about critiquing. I mean, I'm assuming everybody here eventually wants their stories to be critiqued. And you can only expect to get out as much as you put in. Even if you liked it, you can just say, I liked it. In the next draft, I think it could be valuable to explain some of the emotions the main character is experiencing throughout the scene and dialogue. I agree. I agree with that. I wondered how the MC was feeling. I think part of that is the dialogue, the weakness in the dialogue. I mean, if it was, dialogue can just do so much. I mean, for people who read Hemingway, I'll talk about Hemingway a lot if you work with me, but he was really good at putting so much into such short, narrow, back and forth dialogue that he never even needed to say like he said or she said or whatever. Didn't even need to quantify like who was speaking, because it was so poignant, and you just knew who was talking, you knew what they meant, you knew how they felt just by what they were saying. And I think it's really valuable to work on that, and that's something that this piece would really benefit from. I also thought every character had the same voice. I did too. I'm not sure how far along Casey is with the story, but I think each character's voice will be refined in next drafts. I also think that. It also seems like Casey might be over-relying on dialogue to reveal exposition. Completely agree with that. Completely. Exposition is the key word there. It's exposition. It's telling rather than showing. I personally find it difficult to write dialogue. Would love to critique more dialogue examples. Do you want me to critique the dialogue specifically in this piece? So we can do that. I know I've made it. Like I said, I'm not going to go through it, all the dialogue, because there's quite a lot, and I think a lot of it has the same issues. I don't want to just, spend an hour repeating myself. Is that look part of work? Because if you can't afford a haircut and some new clothes, you should have called. I just feel like there's too much information in that. It doesn't have. I mean, what's there? I mean, he's judging him. Is his grandfather judging him because of the way he looks? Is he upset with him because he didn't call? I mean, those are the vibes I'm getting, but I can't really say for sure. And that's part of clarity. I joined late, so not sure what we went through already, but if it's helpful for others too, I'd love to. We'll do it a little bit. We'll do as much as I think is relevant if there's new information. Just so you know, Madison, we read the story together in one run, and we've just sort of started. We're pretty early here. But just we've already been in stream for an hour and 10 minutes. So just for the sake of time, just going to try and do this as efficiently as possible. Okay, next thing here. He said after several tense silent minutes. I think this idea belongs here. So I opened it, took a swig, and sat down in a matching rocking chair next to him. And there's something about them sitting there not talking for a moment, and then his grandfather says that. I wouldn't put that in the end, because if you put it earlier, it builds tension, and it's more linear. I mean, this is very much action-based, where as a reader, we're just watching it happen, and I just think it would be more powerful to have it before. That's a small thing, though. But it comes back to pacing, and I really think pacing is something that needs to be improved in this story. Okay. I like this image. It's not very often I read about a man with a ponytail in a book. I mean, a lot of men have ponytails now, I guess, in the real world, but it's not very often I read about it, and I just felt that was original. I don't know. It painted a very specific picture about the character, and I thought it worked well. But something I didn't like, my beard untrimmed and probably a little out of control. I mean, why probably? Why would you quantify it? Why don't we just do that? My beard untrimmed and out of control. I think that has a lot more going on than probably a little out of control. I mean, that's voice saying probably a little, but I hate words like probably or very, things like that like are trying to amplify what's being said. You don't need to quantify it. You just say what it is and say it accurately, and you won't need those reliances. No biggie, happy to see you anyway. Can't afford a haircut. Can't afford a haircut. Oh, I see what you're saying. Can't afford a haircut. Yeah. That would be a good first line, actually. If he just said, looked at him, just maybe even just like staring at him, like the fuck is this? And just, what, can't afford a haircut? That's actually a pretty good line. I like that. People want to get better at writing dialogue. You should check out Robert McKee's dialogue. I haven't heard of that one. I can't vouch for that. I've never read it. But something that I always did to work on my dialogue is actually I'd watch a lot of movies. I watch a lot of television. And as characters were speaking, I would kind of try to imagine the words in my head. And sometimes I would read scripts for movies or TV shows, specifically the ones that I liked, that I thought really like interested me. Because I mean, that's all dialogue. And you, in a movie, sometimes there's narrators, but usually you're just relying on what the characters say and what you're seeing. So it's a really great way to sort of invest yourself in the dialogue and see what works and what doesn't. And if you analyze it, you'll start to pick up on techniques that some of those master screenwriters are using. Thank you. Yeah, Casey says he likes can't afford a haircut. I think it's a good line too, actually. It's a really good line. It was a great idea. Okay, here's the next thing. Combined with my torn jeans and old faded Harley Davidson shirt, it was a complete 180 from the clean-cut kid that knew before I left. There's something wrong here, first of all. That he knew before I left? Is that what you're trying to say? It was a complete 180 from the clean-cut kid that he knew before I left. I'm assuming he means there's some pronoun that's supposed to be here or something. But it was a complete 180 from the clean-cut kid that he knew before I left. I would be more interested in learning about that than just being told. I think that's something that, again, could be drip-fed through the dialogue. His grandfather could be saying things that make you realize, like, whoa, he was really different before he left to go undercover. I think that's important. I think that's just a moment of exposition that's hurting the writing. I wrote this down. I'm gonna put it in blue. I want to know people's opinion on this one. Oh, Casey said it was a typo. Okay. That they knew. Okay, that's what he meant to say, that they knew. Oops. Okay. What did people think about him calling him Grandpa? I don't know how I feel about that. And I know I'm kind of probably overstepping my boundaries a little bit by critiquing that. It's Casey's decision how he wants to name his characters. But I feel like their relationship is not that close. They haven't talked in a long time. He's kind of badgering him. There's some back and forth, but it just doesn't feel like a grandpa-grandson relationship. I think if he was calling him by his first name, and then you kind of find out as the story keeps going on in the dialogue that he is his grandfather, like maybe at some point the main character says something that he doesn't like and he says, "You don't talk to me like that, I'm your grandfather," or something like that. I think it would be more interesting and just it would add to the tone of the book better than just calling him Grandpa. Because I just don't believe that he would say that. And I don't even believe that the grandfather would even let him call him Grandpa. He just doesn't even seem like that character to me. But I do want to know what people think about that one. Interesting observation. I would agree with you. I wish I could turn off notifications while I did this. It won't let me. I put it on silent mode and it just keeps sending messages. Does anyone else have any opinion on the grandpa thing? Totally agree. There needs to show a distance and a disconnect, and it would be in the convo they have with each other. Yeah, I mean, if it was going to be done, it's something that could be shown in the dialogue exchange. I think it would do a lot. It seems reminiscent of Tom Clancy, who has a habit of calling characters by their first and last name. Calling characters by their first and last name. So like when somebody talks to someone, they like if someone was talking to me in a book, they say, "Hey, Dominic Kent." Is that what you mean? Is that grandpa dialogue for later on down the line or in that original scene? I really like that idea. Sorry, Casey, I'm not totally sure what you mean. If you're saying if I think it should be changed like ASAP as soon as these two characters interact, then yes. I think that it would be something you want to start right off the bat. And again, that could be an opportunity for two characters coming together down like as the story continues. I mean, him and his grandfather, I mean, he doesn't have a dad, so he's going to have a relationship with his grandfather because he's got a missing father figure. So if the story starts out with them kind of being rocky, I could see these characters becoming very, very close as the story kind of continues. It could be a really, really strong relationship in the book, and it's something that people would care about. Would you call him old man? Old man. Hey, old man. I like that. He could. This is going to be one of those things where the character is going to speak for himself. I think Casey should listen to the protagonist and let the protagonist decide what he would call the grandpa. The idea for the grandfather calling out Joe for calling him by his first name, put on original dialogue or something later. It's up to you. I think it would be a cool moment. You could do it early or you could do it later. But I think if you did it early, you could tell the audience that it's his grandfather without him calling him grandpa. And it would be an exciting moment. I would enjoy a line like that where he kind of snaps at him for calling him anything, for the way he's addressing him, or "I'm your grandfather," or something like that. It would be interesting. I think it's just a more exciting way to tell the audience. Okay. We're going to jump ahead a little bit here. So here's another moment where I think that things are being overstated to the detriment of the story. What if you just got rid of all that? Then where's the body, I asked. He was silent for what seemed like a long time. I felt like a kid sitting in the principal's office waiting to get punished. I kind of like that more than all this talking. I didn't see anyone else chasing leads. Everybody wanted answers, but I was the only one looking. I thought you'd be able to get at least some information with your underworld contacts. There's just so much information there that it just, I think it's fattening up the sentence or the dialogue moment. It hurts the tension. It's a technique I've tried playing with. It saves the reader from the redundancy of pronouns and proper names constantly. It's a technique I've tried playing with. It saves the reader from the redundancy. How would it save from the redundancy of proper names if they're using their first and last name? Something I wouldn't steal ideas from Tom Clancy. If that's something Tom Clancy does and something that Tom Clancy is known for, if you do it, you're going to get called out. You're never going to get away with it. So you could learn from the idea of doing it, but I wouldn't mimic it. I would think about nicknames. Everybody's got a nickname for someone. I wouldn't do it for every character, but sometimes if you want to add density to a character or let the reader feel something even when they're just reading the person's name, you can nickname someone anything and it can build on things. So, for example, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the show Intervention. It's like a show where people dealing with like drug abuse or alcohol abuse They do a documentary on that person, and they tell them that they're just doing a documentary on their addiction, and their whole family's involved. And at the end of the show, they come together and do an intervention that the person suffering from addiction is not expecting. Anyway, I was watching an episode of Intervention yesterday, and one of the guys' name on the show was Pizza. Now, it obviously wasn't his real name. It was a nickname. But Pizza. I love that name. I love the nickname Pizza, and it's things like that it just made me pay more attention to that person on the show. It made the person more interesting, made me wonder more about, like, how did he get the nickname Pizza? Like, that's just insane. So I'm not saying that you need to name your characters after a food, but sometimes interesting nicknames, they can do a lot. When he explains his business connections, he mentions his daughter being married to his dad, so that might not work depending. Explains much better without the information dump. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be, whenever you edit dialogue, you're probably going to have to rework how the story or the information's, like, you're probably going to have to wipe it clean and just kind of start over again, which is fine. It happens to everyone. But when I pick things apart, so like this part here, I pick this away, it might hurt some of the information, some of the lines that come up, and you'll have to work around that if you decide to take things away. Those lines could be repurposed into a scene where you show that others don't care about trying to solve the father's disappearance. Yeah, show, don't tell. You're right. These are opportunities. And it's just a little bit more interesting. I think the informative dialogue feels a bit off because it feels like this conversation between the two of them would have happened previously, and the MC would already know why his grandpa didn't have more intel on it. Yeah, Madison's right. I don't even know if these two characters have seen each other since he's been away. Which is something I thought about when I kind of got to the end of reading it for the first time and was thinking back on the notes. I'm not positive, but if this is the moment where his grandfather and this grandson are meeting for the first time in like 10 years, it's a pretty relaxed conversation for that kind of moment. I think, I don't know. I just think this moment's being undersold. All right, let me hop ahead here. Okay. I think this needs to be rewritten. Not mixing... Okay, so nobody would talk to me about it. He said, not mixing family and business wasn't just about the fact that we were on different sides of the law. That is way too jumbled. That needs to be rewritten. I think everyone agreed with me on that. So we go along here. He gets the box. He's looking through what's in there. Look like notes. There were some folders with what looked like notes. With what looked like notes. Why are you unsure? Why can't it just be with notes? Some folders with notes. I really think that... Again, you're not assuring the reader of things. You're making them guess about things that they really don't need to generate questions about. I would just say what it is. So, and another moment here. So this is a minor, like, technical thing that I think should be paid attention to. So I closed it back up and put the box in my truck. So if Casey said, I closed it back up and took the box to my truck, that makes the reader imagine him walking to the truck with the box. And that's just two very small, indiscreet words in the sentence, but that adds so much more action. Where is put? So I am going to put it in here. Let me just... Oops. Tell me what you think about that one. Am I right or am I left? Less is always better than more. I learned that from Hemingway. There's so much you can learn from Hemingway. He's amazing. It's too jumbled to flow. It's too jumbled to flow. I don't. Are you talking about the part with the notes, or what I just talked about with the box in the truck? And just a couple other things here while you guys are answering. I don't know why it slid. What does that mean? He slid out. I mean, slid infers that like somebody's like sliding between things. Like, what is he sliding? Like, did he only open the door like a couple of inches and slide out of the car? I mean, it's a good attempt at trying to add a little bit of flavor to the verb. So I think Casey was on the right track by using slid, but I think this is a cliche, but like in a black man hopped out. I mean, that is a cliche saying hopped out, but it seems more appropriate. So I just think he might want to rewrite that verb. The note, sorry, I'm delayed reaction at this point. That's okay. Don't worry about it. Yeah, I agree. I think it was a little bit jumbled. It just clogs up the information. Black sweaters, blah, 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 blah. I smiled this way. Okay, I like this. I like this part. I'm going to make it green. I'm just going to put a note here. Put better verbs available. Yeah, so anyway, I like this part. He smiled, his white teeth glistened as much as his bald head in the sun. I like it. I think you could be cleaned up a little bit. I think that this could be made to read a little bit. It just feels a little bit choppy or clunky, maybe is the word I'm looking for. But I really like the idea that's there, and I think if it's just written a little bit better, it could be a really great moment. How about "and a black man rushed out"? I mean, if he's rushing out, we don't know if he's rushing out. I didn't get the feeling that he's in a rush to get out of the car. But I mean, yeah, that's an example of, there's other words you could use to describe the moment. It's not as if Casey's locked into slid. There's options. Yeah, it depends on what kind of action Casey wants to capture there. Yeah, absolutely. I just didn't feel like slid was the right word. Okay, so this is another. It's more proof to me that maybe Casey's having a hard time empathizing with the moment. Where was it here? Now that Howie's here, where is that? Shoot. Oh, here we are. He doesn't say hi to Howie. There's no interaction between Grandpa and Howie as far as like Howie just showed up. I mean, the main character had a moment with him. I'm not saying that Grandpa has to come out and pick him up and do cartwheels and blah blah blah. But I just thought it was kind of weird that he had nothing to say or no reaction at all. Even if as the car pulled up, Grandpa be like pointed out like, oh, there's Howie or something. I don't know. It's just something that at least he's paying attention to the fact that the character is showing up. Agreed. Bernadine, revealing a black man. Not sure what you're talking about there. And then here's another example of what I was kind of saying earlier with those transitional words, those little words. Where is it? Shoot. Sorry, I'm... Oh, here we are. Okay. We had moved back up to the porch with fresh beers. Why not onto? Again, these little words that transition characters from one spot to another or transition the reader from looking at something to another, they're really important in my opinion. And onto, that gives a better feeling of stepping onto a porch rather than just saying moving back to the porch or back up to the porch. Back up onto the porch. Oh. Thank you for... Thank you, Bernadine, for clarifying. I didn't know how to react. I didn't know how to react. So, to just saying revealing a black man. I didn't know where that was going. So, thank you for telling me. I shook my head. Oh God, that was funny. Okay. Any thoughts up to this point? Anything that I've kind of gone over that jumped out at you when you were reading and you think we should pay attention to? And does anyone want to take a 5-minute break? We've been here for over an hour. If anybody wants to take a 5-minute break, we can do that. I mean, I'm okay, but I wouldn't argue about making a run to the bathroom. If anybody wants to top up a cup of tea or have a cigarette, anything like that. Just while you're answering, I'm just going to check the Facebook real quick here. Oh, thank you, Faith, for putting that link to the Twitch stream in that chat. I should have put it in. That was stupid of me. I could keep going or take a break, doesn't matter. Yeah, I'm kind of of the same opinion. If somebody wants to take a 5-minute break, I mean, it's totally okay. This is not like, I mean, I want it to be enjoyable, but at the end of the day, this is work what we're doing. And I mean, we've been at it for over an hour, and if somebody wants to just walk away for a couple minutes, it's totally fine. Could be fun for Casey to work on this, and then we critique it again for a later date. We could do that, depending on how many submissions I get, but I would like to get as many people's writing up on the stream as we can. So if somebody's already had a story up that we've critiqued, probably I'll say they got their moment in the limelight until we kind of recycle and go back through the list. But I mean, if people aren't submitting enough writing and we've got nothing to look at and somebody wants to resubmit something that they critiqued, totally fine. Doesn't seem like anybody wants to take a break, so we can just keep plowing along. Okay. Also, I like this. Fresh beers. I like that. So come on, Howie said. See what it is first. I'm still tracking down details from Dad's case. They don't have time. They both look grim. You could use a break from that. It hasn't been a while since they earned a paycheck. So another moment here where I just feel like trimming down some of the wording might work. I shook my head. It's not about money. I can't afford to take a break. Personally, I think that's better. I think that this is just things that we already know, and it just detracts from a good line. Okay. So the next thing is kind of more encompassing. I've kind of touched on this a couple times already, but we've just had a character show up, and they're talking about this case with his mom, and then all of a sudden there's more cars that show up, and there's more people hopping out, and I just feel like we get ambushed with too many characters. I don't even have a chance to really get to know this Howie person before I get another 3 or 4 people dumped in my lap. And most of these people have no they serve no purpose in the chapter. Why do I need to know all these people when he really only talks to his grandpa, his mom, and Howie? That he has a brief interaction with some of them at the beginning when they come up the driveway, but aside from that, I don't see what the point is. And this sort of feeds into my issue with the pacing in the story. I don't really know how to explain pacing. I don't know how to teach someone pacing. When I write and I try to put it in, like, I just kind of have to go with my gut. And in this moment, my gut is telling me that there's just so much happening in this first chapter that is not focused on the conflict. How do all these people showing up at the house and getting to know all these characters have anything to do with this case? Him finding his dad. None of them talk about his dad. None of them talk about this new case that his mom wants him to take. I'm sure these characters will become important down the road in the book, but right now I think they do nothing but clutter. What do you guys think? This is a big one. This is a big critique I'm making about this story, that I just feel like the pacing is off and it's cluttered with information. Agree. Too many people in the first chapter. We want to know more of the relationship between grandpa, mom, and the protagonist plus dog. The other characters can come in later. Yeah, I think that too. Yeah, I should say the dog. I like the dog. And actually, just while we're on the subject, I adore this. I love this. This whole part here. Mom had what appeared to be a loaf of bread in her arms. Except the loaf of bread had a face, large ears, and tiny legs. It squirmed and barked until Mom put it down. You didn't even say the word dog, and I know it's a dog. And it starts out describing it to a loaf of bread. And like when I read it the first time, I'm like, appeared to be a loaf of bread. I wonder what that is. Except the loaf of bread had a face, large ears, and tiny legs. I'm like, well, what the hell is that? And then it squirmed and then barked was the key word. And I don't know, that whole bit just really had my attention. Yeah, the conversation between the grandpa and protag felt rushed and unfinished. I agree. The new characters don't have description in the first chapter, so I couldn't grasp them. So yes, move the characters later. Glad we're on the same page. Saying he couldn't afford to not work in one paragraph, but then soon after he refuses work didn't feel right to me. I think he couldn't afford not to look for his dad. I think that's what he was saying. Where was that? I know I put that somewhere. Shit, I lost it. Casey, maybe you can correct us on that if I'm wrong. But I think that's what he was saying. I think he was saying he couldn't afford to miss out on an opportunity to look for his dad because he hadn't found anything yet. He said it wasn't about money. Oh, shit, it's right there. It's not about money. I've been focused on dad's disappearance for so long and feel like I haven't gotten anywhere. I can't afford to take a break. I love the dog too. I think the new characters also come across as a device to get the plot moving. Okay. So what device? What do they do specifically, Jamal, to move the plot, in your opinion? Because personally, I don't think they do anything for the plot. They have in no way moved the story. We have a character show up at his grandfather's house. He's been looking for his dad. He gets introduced to a new case. That is the plot of the first chapter. It's your inciting incident. He's getting onto this case or these two cases, I guess, that are going to be the focal point of the story. I don't think these characters move along the plot, but if you think that you've got more to offer, then, just say what you think if I'm wrong. Earlier he says I still had to make money. me check. You're right. I still had to make money. All the cities I bounced around to were connected to him. I never stopped looking into his disappearance. That's a great catch. So clearly money is important to him. So that can go one of two ways. Either he's made enough money that he no longer needs to worry about it, or something has changed for him that he no longer cares about money. But neither one of those are answered or even alluded to. So that's a good catch. That's a really good catch, actually. I didn't even notice that. I intended it for not taking a break from looking for Dad, but the fact that it was perceived differently is very helpful. Oh, that's good. I think this has a lot of promise overall. Just needs to put more work into it. Less details in some places, more details in lacking ones. If you try to even the amount of details out and give the dialogue some emotional and personality, I think this would be a solid first chapter. I would keep reading. I love the premise. My space bar moved itself on me, apparently. Yeah, so that kind of feeds into what I was saying about drip feeding information, building questions with the writing setting, or building tension. I really think, okay, so maybe I'll adjust what I said about pacing. Pacing is the amount of information and how quickly you offer it. I'm going to say that. So there's far too much information in this in the wrong places and not enough in the areas that we would be most interested in. So that's going to be something that Casey needs to take upon himself to kind of, as the edits go through and figure out for himself and decide like what he wants his reader to be interested in. What does he want the reader to have questions about, things like that. Attractive blonde felt a bit weird. Agreed it would be good to get more description of all characters, but also the blonde term here is vague, and as a reader this would turn me off to the story, as I like to see female characters described with some depth, even if they're not the main characters in the novel. Great point. Great point. This is a huge issue I have with descriptions, actually. It's like the words like beautiful or handsome or, I mean, blonde, I guess you could use. It is kind of flat, but the word I have an issue with is attractive. I actually did write that down. I forgot to note that. That doesn't mean anything to anyone because attractive is an objective opinion. What I find attractive and what somebody else finds attractive are two totally different things. So if you're trying to build up a character and describe them so that the character that the reader has a mental image, that does nothing. You have to, I just like you need to describe a character that would look beautiful or attractive. You can't just say the word attractive. I don't really want to give an example because I don't really think that unless somebody in the book, their attractiveness has an effect on the plot, I just don't really think it matters. Attractive is a flat adjective. Yeah, it is. But I mean, I would take it even one step further. I would say it's a broken adjective. I think it does not have any effect on story writing. So I think we're all pretty well agreed on that one. Let's see what else I got here. Whoops. I just like that part. He describes a dog. What the hell is that, I asked. It's a corgi. I like that. I like that whole part. I already love the corgi. That just goes to show, like, the way you describe something is going to have a huge impact on how a reader builds a relationship with a character. So even just describing as a squirming loaf of bread barking, I already love this dog. It's well done. Very good job, Casey. here's a little thing. It's just a technical thing. First of all, there should be a comma. I repeated mockingly. So you really just have to say I mocked. We just read the line before. We don't need to know that. You don't need to say you repeated it. We know you repeated it. And you can always, this is something I would do. You don't necessarily have to do it, but I would just italicize if you're trying to add, that sort of like tone to the line or the moment. Italics, they can be overused, but in some moments they can be helpful. So that's a me thing. You don't necessarily have to do that. Just saying it again and saying I mocked to be enough. Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna do this. I'm not gonna tell you what to do about that. I'm gonna let you decide for yourself. But the comma definitely needs to be there. And I do think that just the I mocked. Here, this is what I'll do. Just so Casey will know when he reads it. How does that sound perfect for me? I just thought that this was a little bit... I think that can be rewritten to be a little bit more clear. It just... how does that sound perfect for me? Now I'm having second guesses. The first time I read it, it didn't feel like something a person would say. But then now that I say it out loud, I'm kind of having second thoughts. What do people think? Does that sound believable? I can't believe I'm drinking this tea. It is so bad. Hey, Riley, how you doing? If you're just popping in, we've done quite a bit of work here. We've read the story already. We're a little over halfway through critiquing it. I'm glad to hear you're doing good. All right, I'm just gonna, I put this in blue. I'm gonna say maybe it could be rewritten to be a little bit more clear, but I will let Casey decide. And here was another part that I just think that this needs to be rewritten. He's got some emotional issues. He also seems to be stubborn as a rock. So this is another moment where it's like you're nervous to be specific. Why does he have to seem to be? Why can't he just be stubborn as a rock? He's also stubborn as a rock. I just think that you want to be direct and clear. And I also just thought, like, he's got some emotional issues. He also seems to be stubborn as a rock. I mean, isn't being stubborn an emotional issue? Or even, like, what do you mean by emotional issues? There's nothing in the story that shows that he has emotional issues. Like, are you saying he's, like, overly attached? Or... Riley, what are you doing? I knew this was going to happen eventually. Where people were going to show up to the stream and just say, what the fuck is going on? So we're a critique group. So we have a group on Facebook where we submit each other's creative writing, and we come onto Twitch after we've read it and put some notes down. We just critique. It's a critique group. We just want to help each other become better creative writers. If you have any interest in creative writing, or you just want to hang out and listen to us, you're more than welcome to pop in and offer your opinion. Oh, I knew that was going to happen eventually. Someone was going to pop in and just be like, what the hell is going on? What do people think about the dog? About the emotional issues and the stubborn as a rock bit? I like it. Perfect for me because... Yeah, that's got a little bit more personality to it. I write stories all the time that are comedies, but in a very different way. What does that mean? In a very different way. It was like dark humor? I love doing this. This is so much fun. I'm such a nerd. Just a quick one here. There should be a comma. This is going to be another objective thing. I just feel like there should be a new chapter. Well, no, I take that back. There shouldn't be a new chapter because at the end of this, well, okay, let me think here. The first chapter focuses on the interaction with the grandpa and the main character and the introduction of the whole idea about finding his father. And then there is the introduction of sort of the secondary case that he's taking on. So part of the issue I had was I just feel like in the chapter, there's just so much information. And I really do feel like there's 2 or 3 chapters worth of information in this first chapter. But I'm not opposed to the idea of introducing both the backstory of the father and the introduction of this new conflict with this new case in the first chapter. I think those are both appropriate for an introduction. But I just feel like a lot is happening with all these characters and all this time passing and all this stuff. There's too much information for a first chapter to really be intriguing and focus on some things. I mean, I think you're better off being direct about a couple of ideas than introducing all these characters and all these emotions and all these things, because it just dulls down what you're trying to do. I'm not sure how to describe my humor, but I haven't seen many people use it. Well, Riley, if you'd like us to take a look at it, you can join our Facebook group, and we would be happy to read it. If you're interested in that, maybe somebody would be kind enough to put a group link in the chat. Can we have a thought in his head about the dog? We could. I didn't feel it was necessary. I mean, we kind of do have a thought because he's pretty resistant to the idea of the dog. He's very sarcastic about it. He doesn't really seem to care. So I think that's just an event of showing rather than telling, which is what I'd like to see going on in story writing. I think that's something that Casey actually did pretty well. Stubborn as a mule is a cliche. You're right. It didn't really bother me when I read it, but it is important to know where the cliches are. Madison, what are the dog's emotional issues? Is there a behavior they result in? Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying, where, the dog is introduced to the story and it goes on, but at no point does the dog do anything or act in any way that would make me think, oh yeah, that dog's got issues. He just kind of hangs around. He pops in here at the beginning. He's just, wrestling around in her arms and barking a little bit. And then he just walks out to the porch later on and just sits there. I just wish the dog did more. We have a thought. Stubborn as a mule. Yeah, so what else we got here? I thought the here was unnecessary by 5:30. I think that's more of the way it would read normally. And here's an interesting thing. Actually, someone brought up Hemingway earlier, and I'm going to bring him up again now. Here, let's get this whole thing here. Sitting at the end of the table, staring down at Grandpa past the rest of the family made me feel tremendously out of place. As a reader, we're going to imagine this, beginning with him sitting at the end of the table looking down. Hemingway is really good at setting scenes because he, if you think of like a play, so there's like the big backdrop in the background, and then like sometimes they'll have like cutouts, like big cutouts in front of that, and then like smaller cutouts in front of it, like those as well, like to kind of get this like 3D effect that guides the image of the scene they're trying to put on for a play. So when Hemingway writes descriptions, especially scenery, he starts small and he winds up very big. So he'll describe like a tree in the field, in front of the river that was, led beyond to the mountains. He guides your imagination in a linear path. And I don't necessarily say you should always copy him exactly like that, but I think it's a really, really smart technique when you're trying to give descriptions. So in this particular moment, I felt that it would be more effective if you said sitting at the end of the table, looking past the family to the end at grandpa. So you've got that linear observation where you follow his eyes and it just paints this picture from one end to the other. It's very technical, but I just think that it would be really useful. I like that you said that about too much going on. I can remove introductions and just say the family arrived. Do you agree that the important things are the grandpa, Howie, protagonist, mom, and the dog? The grandpa's important. The mom is important for one reason only, and that's to instigate the new plot. Howie doesn't really do anything. And at this point, the dog doesn't really do anything. I'm okay with the dog being there because it's a small character. You can't write dialogue for a dog other than bark. So there's not a lot of pressure on you to do that. But I think it's important to flesh out the actions of the dog. I would ask you, Casey, why does the family need to be here for all this? Why are they even showing up? I'm still wondering about how long has this protagonist been away? How long has he been undercover? Are these people all meeting him for the first time in 10 years? Because it just doesn't feel like a reunion. It doesn't feel like it really has a point. And I think it's really important to be intentional, very intentional with a first chapter, that everything you're doing has a real purpose to start the story. So, I mean, is this a family reunion? Is this people showing up to see the protagonist? I don't really know what the point is. Yeah, is it an event like an Xmas reunion? Yeah. Exactly. Only the mother is the only character that matters as far as this family showing up. She's the only one that does anything. The rest of them just kind of add fat. I'm going to let you guys think about that. I'm going to keep going. I will point out, though, I like this idea. I like this moment of thought for the character. I'm not crazy about the way it's written, but I do really like this moment of introspection for the main character. Clearly, it's weighing on his mind a lot about his dad and his disappearance. I like it. First time meeting in 10 years was the idea. Yeah, you didn't sell it. It never at any point felt... I mean, if I hadn't seen a brother or a son or the relationships these characters have with this guy for 10 years, he's been undercover. I mean, I would have a much stronger reaction. Maybe they're throwing a party that he's back. It doesn't really feel like a party. I mean, it could be, though. You could amplify that. But I just think it's really undersold. Mom asked him to come back and catch up with family or dinner and say, we hadn't seen you for so long. Mom asked. Not really sure what you mean. For the sake of time, I'm gonna put the gas down a little bit on this. It's been 2 hours, and I'm sure people are getting a little restless. A lot of the things, obviously, I'm talking about are repetitive issues. So if we point out one, it's up to Casey to go through the story and decide where these same issues exist. You can never hold a writer's hand through the process. They need to learn to do the editing on their own. But that's the point of critiquing, is that you can give the impression as a reader as to the things that are sticking out and not maybe working correctly that will help that editing process. Another moment here. Where is it? After dinner, the soda and rum. Yeah. I don't know why you specified 4 cubes of ice. I mean, you could have just as easily said it's full of ice. I made a tall rum and soda full of ice and took it out onto the back porch. It looks it's a more clear image in my head that it's just this drink with ice cubes through it rather than just 4 cubes of ice. It just seems like it's over described. Where I was going with that was to introduce the family later on, so it's not overwhelming with characters. Yeah, I would introduce these characters later on, especially if they start to play a part in the plot, because right now they do not. But as soon as they would introduce, some angle, I think it would be more appropriate. Or the other side, obviously, is they're having this 10 years after not seeing them. They're all getting together. If they could just add more to that sentiment of a 10-year reunion. It's not necessary that they need that be taken out, but I'm just saying right now, as technical devices, these characters serve no purpose. Okay, here's another thing. Where is it? With Frankie by my side. I read that and I was like, so what, they're friends now? Because he didn't like the dog before. They really haven't had any moments where they're getting closer to one another. But he's sitting out here with the dog, and it just has that feeling of them being friends. So I think that's important to pay attention to and realize what you're trying to do and build on that. Dark Abyss, where is that? Dark Abyss. That is a cliche, and it really doesn't mean anything. It was quiet, possibly the closest thing to peace I've felt in a while. Again, I like the idea. I like that you're trying to instill this sense of, he's relaxing, but I think it's undersold. I think you could find a better way to describe that emotion that just means more, because right now it just kind of feels like a cliche. It kind of feels meaningless, but I think it's probably important to the character. Just beef it up. Another issue here, pacing. She just comes out and then just immediately she's talking. It just didn't feel natural. Jumping ahead here. Where is it? Now I was curious. Here. I like this. Because I was curious too. A scared person turning down a protective detail was unusual. Now I was curious. This is a great line. Because it makes, as a reader, I was curious too. I wanted to know why. Because if he's the guy who's been undercover for 10 years, he's a veteran cop. If he's curious about something, then I'm going to be curious. Because I trust his judgment. Unless it's the way his dad always made his drink. I mean, if that's the case, that would be interesting to put in. I would want to know that. And then the last one here, I took a long pull from my cigarette and washed it down with an even longer pull from my drink. I just like that too. I like the rhythm in it. I like the sense of him just like smoking and drinking. He's getting stressed out. He's taking on a new mission or new case when he's already, up to his waist dealing with this whole dad thing. I don't know. I enjoyed the sentiment. But that's the end of the story. That's everything I got. So, a couple last points I want to make. As I make these points, if there's any final comments that people want to make, final sentiments, final bits of advice for Casey, just please put them into the chat now. I said pacing is very important in thriller detective stories. It builds suspense and questions. It should be an editing priority. So Casey, when you edit the first chapter, you need to focus on pacing. You need to focus on the questions that the readers are going to come away with, the information, like I said, the drip feed of information. Don't offer too much information in the wrong spots and too little when they're needed, things like that. We've pointed out a lot of those moments. I think that you'll have an easier time going through it. Characters could use a little more dimension, especially the protagonist. So we all were kind of agreeing on that the characters all feel pretty well the same. Even the protagonist. I mean, the protagonist is clearly a very important character in this story, and I just don't feel that his attitude and his dialogue, or I'm not being sold on the protagonist as someone that's really going to offer a really interesting story, who's going to make interesting decisions and interesting reactions to things. Like, he just seems very flat. And for somebody reading a cop thriller, I want to read about someone who's just, off the wall, who you never know what's going to do, who's going to have cool reactions to difficult situations that is just going to make me, just have my hands glued to the book. I did point out there's a healthy balance of dialogue, narrative, and descriptions. That's good. There, at no point did I feel that there was dialogue was being over prioritized over description or narrative. I really did feel that through the whole reading there was a healthy balance between everything, and that's something that is really difficult to teach new writers. So I think in that regard, Casey, you've got a really good leg up. So embrace that skill. And the last thing, again, something that we've really talked about, there's a lot of characters I want to feel attached, not bombarded. So I don't want to feel that characters being shoved down my throat. I want to get to know people and have an emotional reaction, an emotional attachment to these characters, like I did with the Corgi. I had a real moment with that Corgi description where I love the dog, but I never felt that way. And it doesn't mean that I have to love characters. I could hate someone. I could think that one of the grandpa, he could be just a rude son of a bitch, and I could hate his guts. But if I have a real reaction to a character, it's fun to hate someone in reading or in a book. It's fun to, I don't know if anybody watches South Park, but Cartman's hilarious. Cartman's one of my favorite characters in the whole show, but he's awful. He's the worst. He's basically Hitler. And I don't agree with Hitler. I don't think anything he did was great, but I love Cartman as a character. He's entertaining. So I just think characters need to be fleshed out and paced better, so that I just feel like I'm having real moments with these introductions and not just sort of shoved down my throat. Just getting them out of the way so that you don't have to introduce them later on. Just do it when it's appropriate. So that's everything. That is what I've got. So I'm going to go use the washroom. While I'm gone, I just want people to put in their last thoughts. Just put in your final thoughts. If there's anything you want to say to Casey, if there's anything you want to say to me, if there's anything you want to say about the story, just put them in. I'll be back in 2 minutes. appreciate all of this. I felt like I've gained a lot from this. Well, I'm glad, Casey. Really, really appreciate you providing the writing so that we could all work together and look at it too. It takes balls, to put your writing in front of a bunch of strangers and let them, pick away at it. So, it means a lot. So thank you, Casey. Casey, this is great. Would love to know more. There's definitely a hook and interesting characters. I enjoy reading detective stories. Yeah, I think there's a really good potential in this story too. I mean, like I was saying earlier, I think the whole background story of the father and then the new story with this upcoming case, I think there's just a lot of potential for a really interesting read. Great shot, Dominic. Looking forward to seeing where you go with your story, Casey. Thank you, Bernadine. And I agree. I look forward to seeing where it goes, Casey. Dominic, thank you for creating this group. It is a great eye-opener for me as I don't understand the rules around writing. I also have learned from the community too. Show and not tell. It's something I need to learn. It's something everyone needs to learn. And it's not always obvious when you're telling instead of showing. It's definitely a skill. This is a great first attempt at a draft, Casey. I don't know much of this story you have plotted, but I would love to read more. Remember to use your characters effectively. They should all serve a purpose in the scene. Thank you for letting us critique your story. Yeah, thanks for letting us, Casey. I'll let you guys just another moment there, just if there's anything else you want to say. How did people feel about the stream? I mean, it's been 2 hours. Are people burnt out? Did we take too long? Did you feel, or you feel like, we could have cut this down to an hour? Did you feel that there was enough information here that would help you with your own writing? What do you, because this is the first real stream we've done. The last one was a test stream. It was only about 45 minutes. This is a big one. So I'm interested to hear what people think. Oh, and I'm done with the tea. God. That is disgusting. Ugh. Good duration and like to analyze a story piece. Yeah, I mean, it is going to take time. Because you want to be specific and you want people to learn. You don't want to just say, well, this is wrong, fix it. You need to go a little bit more in depth and make time for people to offer their opinions. So, I mean, this is never going to be something that gets done in 20 minutes. But, I mean, 2 hours is a long time to be sitting here really focusing on writing. So, good duration and length to analyze a story piece. Thank you, Casey, for sharing your writing. So, Casey, if you don't mind, just to be absolutely clear, you are okay with me putting this stream up on YouTube, correct? No objections there? Hi. Hi. This is my cat. Come say hi. Oh. Come say hi. I don't know if you can see her. Her name's Kat. She's the sweetest kitty in the world. She's very timid. So anytime anyone comes over, she's always hiding under a couch. Two hours went fast. Did it? Well, I'm glad. It's a lot of talking I've done. For beginning to learn about writing, where is a good place to start? Honestly, here. I really think that as a writer, learning, I think doing exactly what we're doing is a great way. Provide your writing. We will look at your writing and we will tell you what needs to be worked on and what you're doing well, and you can focus on those. But I really think that, and that's the point of this, right? I'm not looking for people that have been writing for 10 and 15 years to do this project with. I'm looking for people that are new or somewhat experienced and they just want some input. Because as you get more experienced as a writer, you're gonna teach yourself how to learn, and you're gonna learn how to read other successful books and so forth, and learn from that writing and get more direct information than going through a group. But it's really hard to learn how to do that. So that's why I want to do this, and I mean I enjoy it. But I know that when I first started writing, being in critique groups was just insanely helpful. It really taught me a lot. I have cats, dogs, goats, and llamas. Wow. That's amazing. Do they all have names? Reading a lot will also help you. Absolutely, reading will help you. Reading is imperative. If you want to write, you need to. If you want to write, you need to read. I'm still trying to understand what show means rather than tell. So, okay, perfect example with where can I find something? I know we brought it up a couple times. Oh, come on. Okay, let's talk about the dog then. So show versus tell. So the mom tells us that the dog's got emotional issues and it's stubborn as a rock. But in nowhere in the story does the dog actually do these things. So you're far off better showing the dog having emotional issues, doing things that tell you it has emotional issues, or being stubborn, rather than just telling the reader. Because as soon as you, like, when I read this, by the next page I'd forgotten it, because it's not relevant to the story. But if it's made relevant and the dog's doing these things, then it's showing. It's showing us the dog acts, it has this behavior, and it's going to mean a lot rather than just saying it. I hope that answers your question. Too many to list. Wow. Do you have like a hobby farm kind of thing? I'm glad that's better. You're welcome. I would love to have some small group, our partner discussions about how a full story comes together. Things like how to outline a book, how to build tension and develop plot in a story, how to develop characters, etc. Is anyone interested in doing a side call to discuss that and share knowledge? I mean, we can certainly do that. Right now, these sessions are built upon critiquing stories, but I'm like, I mean, we did the last one 5 days ago. I won't probably do another one for another 5 or 6 days just to give people time to read it if they want to. But I'm totally okay with doing more streams, but some of them focus on different things than actually critiquing. We can actually just sit down and discuss writing, and I can try to put together like a PowerPoint or something with some tips on how to get better. I actually had an idea, which is kind of weird, but video games are some video games are really, really great stories. And on Twitch, quite a lot of people play video games. And so it wouldn't be weird if I played video games on Twitch in the stream. But we could you could watch me play games that are story-based, and we could, together as a group, I'll have to play the game a little bit, but we'll just focus on some of the introductions to these games, because they are seriously great stories, and they do all of the things that I'm talking about. And there's a lot to be learned there. I mean, it'd be great if we could watch a movie together or watch a television show together, but I'm not allowed to do that on stream. I will be sued and I'll have the channel taken down. But we can do video games. And if anybody's interested in that idea and focusing on the story in the beginning of a game and talking about it, I mean, I'll pause the game at important points and kind of talk about what's going on, and people can contribute. But that's something that we can talk about another time. But I think it's an opportunity. Madison, I also mentioned in a different video that's posted on the group about reading a book called A Farewell to Arms. I actually got it right here, by Ernest Hemingway. I thought that maybe everybody who's interested could read the book, and then we could do a stream about it and just talk about some of the things that Hemingway does, because like I said before, I learned a lot from this book about writing, and there's a lot of lessons, and his writing is very clear and it's easy to learn from. So if people are interested in doing that, that'd be great. I'd enjoy it because it's one of my favorite books. What's this book called again? It's called A Farewell to Arms. I'll put it in the chat here. And that's by Ernest Hemingway. Yeah, I'd like to be part of it. Yeah, I mean, we can totally do that. Obviously, you have to give people time to read the book. I mean, I need time to read the book again. I won't just do it off memory. So if people are interested in doing that, just send me a message through Facebook, or maybe I'll do a poll in the group just to get people's opinion on whether or not they would want to read a book together. I read his Old Man and the Sea. Yeah, and actually, Old Man and the Sea, I mean, it's his most famous book. I originally thought that maybe that would be the book that we could do, but to be frank, A Farewell to Arms, in my opinion, is the best book he ever wrote. It's got the best plot, and it's the easiest to learn from. Old Man and the Sea is very, very dense. There's not a whole lot of dialogue. It's his masterpiece, but it's very much literature, where Farewell to Arms is more of a story. Look forward to reading it, learning it. Yeah, I mean, if people want to do it, I'm totally okay with it. I would read the book on my own anyway, just because I like it. So, okay, I'm a little tired. I'm not gonna lie. So, any last thoughts before we wrap this up? Shoot, did we get an answer from Casey about posting it to YouTube? Casey, did you? I'm sorry if I missed it. Did he leave? Can I see who's in here? Yeah, Casey, if you're still here, if you could just give me a thumbs up about whether or not this is okay to go to YouTube. If he's not here, I'll just message him through Facebook, but... I think he might have left. Okay. Let's wrap it up. We've all worked hard tonight. We're all tired. We can put our feet up. So, good job, everyone. I'm really impressed with the engagement. This is great. Everyone's contributing, and that's the only way this works. So I'm really pleased with the group. Yeah, everybody have a good night. Okay. All right. We'll chat again soon. Okay.